This is EBS Radio.
Welcome. This is E.B. Smith with The Facts Matter. Today we're going to dive into the first chapter of The Real State of Black America. How it really is, how we assume it is, and what can our kids do to survive in it. Today on the show, I have a major contributor to the show, a guy that has been well informed about the state of America, has been telling me and educating me on it in the last 4 or 5 years. Mutawaf Shaheed, author, a poet, a speaker, religious leader, and historian. I consider the background information that he has to present today is going to be well understood. And he's just a plain or simple guy. Welcome. So tell him a little bit about yourself and tell him about your background, and then we'll dive into this.
Well, I know that a lot of times, you have a lot of people that are propagating themselves and pushing themselves out there as somebody who has a lot of knowledge about certain things and they don't even have any gray hair. And one of the things that I like to make clear is that I've been in this for decades. I'm not a Johnny-come-lately or somebody who just had a sudden awakening. And my awakening has been something that has been ongoing since I was in my early 20s, after I left high school. And I've been writing about it. I've been involved in it in every particular facet of life, in terms of the arts, in terms of the music, in terms of the political manifestations of what has happened to our people, and the downgrading of the consciousness of certain people in our communities that should be aware of these kind of things. There's tools that have been made available to many of our people that they don't use because of the fact that they're distracted, or because of the fact that their egos are getting in the way and they want it to be about themselves rather than being about the people or the movement itself. I'm very well acquainted with all of these different delusions that have been cast upon the community at large. And so when I tell you something, it's based on not my opinion, but it's based on my observations over the years. I'm 81 years old, and there's never been one period in my life for the last 60 plus years where I've taken a break, and I've become a part of the status quo's madness.
Explain why that's important. Why is that so important when speaking to black people?
Well, actually, it's really a logical conclusion that if you don't know something, you should not speak on it until you go and learn about it. And after you learn about it, then you can come and speak on it. So if you're only exposed to a certain time frame or a certain period of time, and you've actually lived yourself in that period of time, then you can speak probably pretty coherently about that period of time. But if you have not lived in a period of time, then you have to have your information is secondhand. Okay? In other words, somebody has told you something about something that went on before. Okay? So I try not to speak about things that I haven't experienced, or things that people who are close to me and we haven't experienced together. So it's important when I use the term gray hair, that's like an indication of somebody who has put in time, somebody's hair who's gotten gray because they've invested in information that is important for the development of them, their families or themselves or the society around them. And footprints, understand, is the same basic analogy, where you have people that talk about things, but when you look at their history, there's no experience. They really don't have any track record about the things that they're talking about.
Why do you think it's really important that when we're talking about the state of Black America, while a person that's informed should be better informed, right? Why is that so important to you? Why should some novice be speaking? Why is it bad for the novice to talk?
Because of the fact that he doesn't really know what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. Okay, in real time, he doesn't really know what he's talking about. he's making assumptions. And I'm not saying that the assumptions that he's making are not correct. But when we start talking about factual information and data, the data speaks for itself, essentially. And if you are getting data that could be polluted from a source because you're not familiar with the source, because you haven't lived during that time when that data was produced to know that this person is lying, this is not true what they're saying, and you just quoting things, out of the blue, then you don't really actually have facts.
But really, one reason why I asked that is because this show is not about condemning one political party over other, but there was a recent candidate, and he made the statement that blacks were better off during Jim Crow days. And I think you kind of meant that we were more together back in the Jim Crow days.
You had to be. In order to survive, you had to be. That's why a lot of the things that African American people did to survive, I don't criticize. Simply because had they had the opportunities that white people had to survive, then certain things that they did, they wouldn't have had to do.
Yeah. So there's a part of what he said that's got some truth in it.
Yeah, because you were forced to do business with one another. You were forced to go to your own restaurants and support the people who own the restaurant. You had to drive in the taxis that was supported by your people, that owned by your people. You had to stay at the hotels. You had to go to the Airbnbs. Even if you were a very famous musician, the racism and the ignorance the ignorance that dwelled amongst the white people at that time was they were so racist and so blind to their racism, they didn't understand until later that they should be taking your money and not loving you. And the black people thought that because they had access to their markets now, some kind of way that was going to change the attitude that those people had about them because they were taking their money. And they were so ignorant and they were so glad to think that they were progressing because they were giving white people their money that there's going to be some kind of respect. In fact, they got more disrespect because of the stupidity that the people found out, man, we're doing all this stuff to these people and they're still giving us their money.
Do you think that desegregation hurt black business?
Yes.
Explain.
Yes. Simply because of the fact that, as I stated earlier, you were forced to have to do business with the guy who owned the store around the corner. Okay, because of the fact that, and he had to do things like going to black people who had farms to get produce, to go to people who had factories that were set up to help black people. Small places, small farms, small places that produce certain kind of equipment. Like those were the things that forced you to have to deal with other black people. And the white people, they got wise to it and said, well, wait a minute. They don't, why are we allowing them to prosper on our land? Okay? Because you should be taxed for everything, whether it's gambling or whatever. And gambling became illegal when you didn't pay taxes on it. And black people survived through gambling, through the numbers houses, through the bootleg places, and all the rest of that kind of through other activities that were deemed illegal. That's how you were able to pay your family's rent and somebody else's family's rent. This is how you were able to do many of the things that you were able to do before integration. When integration, they just integrated with your money. That was the end of it. The system has never changed from the time it was put in place. All they did is make improvements upon the oppression. They made improvements. And then when a person starts going after something, they have to figure out, well, what am I going after this for? And what am I going to accomplish when I go after this? Okay, that's the kind of questions that people need to ask themselves, because you're not going to go and build anything independently of these people, because we tried that and you saw the results of that. Like I mentioned before, they sent the January 6th type mentality to destroy your Tulsas and your Rosewoods and all those other black communities that you had established. They don't want that. You were not brought here to be independent and free. You were brought here to be the cash cow for every immigrant who walks through the doors in the United States. For every for every person that came in has promised the dream of America, you have $1.5 trillion economy amongst African Americans. Okay? So you get some foreigners who come in here who are not going to help you do anything. You understand? They're going to disrespect you. They're going to call you names because they feel that that's how you fit into America, is by being a racist bigot like the people who are already here.
Do you think that the black consumer now is too far removed from that history to ever revert back to that? In other words, will they ever support black businesses, right? They're so in tune with that white people have the best restaurants, they have the best stores. Do you think that they would ever go, hey, we're going to spend most of our money with black people? Is that the group we have now?
They've tried. I mean, and thank goodness for those brothers and sisters who have tried that. It just basically is too limited. There are not enough people who have bought into that. And the younger generation, has strayed so far from that, it's just unbelievable. Because number one, you have to have self-esteem. You have to believe that what you have is just as good or better than somebody else's. And if you have all of these materialistic dreams, that means that you're prepared to sacrifice some of your self-esteem to achieve the materialism that you feel is so important for you. Okay? They'll let you have a nail salon. They'll let you have a barber shop. They'll let you have a rib joint, because how many people are going to be able to buy houses and cars and send their kids to college off of a nail salon and off of a barber shop?
You feel like that the limited things they let us have is just enough to keep us quiet?
That's exactly what it is. And then what happens, you have black intellectuals who we have many of. We're not short of intellectual. We're not short of talent. We're not short of anything that it needs to run a society. We're not short of anything. Our people are creative. Yep. They're brilliant. Yep. They're survivors. Okay? So we're not short on any of those things. Our shortages come in amongst the people who are ignorant. Okay? And we're surrounded by that ignorance. At one time, in the period of time that you were talking about, where black people had to do business with each other, they were forced to get along in their neighborhoods because families were families. There was a mother, there was a father, there was a grandparents that lived in the same place. They grew up in these areas. So what happens is when regentrification came about, they destroyed those areas, so there's no way that you can go back and visit a place that you grew up in, that your neighbors were kind to you, that you worked together to give me some sugar, to give me some pop, to give me some Crisco or whatever it was that you were able to borrow. Now you have broken families that are living in these places that are no longer communities. They are neighborhoods where you have this guy who doesn't even know who his father is, being raised by his grandparents. How do you build something with a destroyed mentality like that? This individual is destroyed.
As you speak about that, I think I'm asking myself, yes, the elite whites created that, but do you think that the new blacks, well, I would say new blacks, the new generation blacks are actually, now they're the ones who are actually the gatekeepers of that?
They've always been the gatekeepers on some level. Mm-hmm. You have to remember, a system is something that you put in place and that you make adjustments in that system when you see things that are possibly breaking away or breaking loose or finding holes in that system. You make the adjustments. Okay, so there have always been that. When you go back to the overseer on the plantation, that was his job. And some of the black overseers were worse on the slaves than the white people who were overseers, because the white people understood that these black people were assets. These slaves were assets. They had to pay for these slaves. And so you have this ignoramus white and this ignoramus Negro coming there mutilating the black people, the slaves. Wait a minute, man. Who's going to do the work? This stupid, he's not going to do anything. He's just a serial killer, a mentally deranged serial killer.
Right.
That's what he is. And he's always been that. Okay? He's never going to change. So to your point, they've always had this position of gatekeeper, and they struggle for that position. To make sure, they'll tell them, look, man, you don't have to pay him that. You could pay me this, and I'll do the job. Okay? And we're surrounded by these kind of people. And what happens is, through their diets, through their medication, through the psychological damage from not having a whole family. This has created these Frankensteins that exist in your neighborhood. And so you're not even safe to walk through your own neighborhoods simply because you got Mrs. So-and-so with these children, you understand, who are on Ritalin and on every other kind of substance, going through the neighborhood, killing people, robbing people. You're not even safe in your own neighborhoods. Why do you think they gave the gun rules open carry? Now you don't even have to have a license to carry a gun, because they know that you having a gun as a black person is more deadly to you, because the likelihood of you going into a white neighborhood doing something is highly unlikely versus you doing something to your own people in your own neighborhood, because they got the sentinels out waiting for you to come in their neighborhood.
First of all, let's define what you consider the system.
The system is based on money, wealth. Period. There's no moral fiber. There's no conscience. There's only expediency and the manipulation of people in order to gain maximum profit. The system is based on money. There are components in that system that underpin the initial setting up of the system. Those components are racism, sexism, any kind of ism that you want to do. But all of these things are distractions for the people so that they do not interfere with the basic rudiments of the system. So these people are everybody on every level is being manipulated. Okay. Even the people who have a lot of money, they're manipulated as well. They can't help you because of the fact the system says that if you help this person, they have the sentinels in place. These are the guys that you went to college with, the white people you went to college with, the Negroes that you went to college with, that you went to high school with. Now, they all have a particular place in the system, and that the place that they possess in that system is to make sure you don't prosper and you do not set up a separate system other than theirs. That's what this system is about. It's about money. It's about money because money is the controlling factor, is the controlling arm over the people, because they buoy up these false desires in people, making them buy things that they need, that they want, and taking and making wants needs and needs wants. It's not palatable, you understand, to work against the system like that. Advertising, dreams, they take and twist people's minds and their psychology to make them want certain things that they don't really need.
So you think that the system now is relying on more of a psychological means as opposed to just beating with whips now? I think it's more psychological.
All of it is a part of the system. That's what the police's job is. The police's job is to make sure when they patrol your neighborhoods, to make sure they do this on a consistent basis to patrol your neighborhood, to make sure that how does he have a Benz in his driveway? How does this dude have a BMW in his driveway? Because they've been programmed to look for those kind of things, the kind of prosperity that may start bubbling up in your neighborhood. You have to be able to justify that. They report, say, well, I saw so-and-so, he has been riding around in this brand new Benz. All right, put him on an investigation. Find out what he's doing. Okay? And if it's legitimate what you're doing, then they will come up with a law to undermine that legitimacy to make sure that you do not prosper. This whole piece is based on you not prospering, you not getting outside of the fundamental restrictions of the society, of the system. You have good people who work for an evil system. Okay? And they can't help it. They may be good people. They may be moral. They may be all that. But in order for them to fulfill the false desires that have been created in them, they have to do things for the system that under normal circumstances they wouldn't do. So now normal circumstances are no longer normal for them. The system's demands become normal for them.
There are good people that have a bad understanding.
You have good people that have a bad understanding, and then you have good people who have a good understanding. But what overrides that understanding is the system's ability to manipulate them and to use them to follow their own desires to get the kind of things in life that they consider to be important. Okay, so they take the people's will. Advertising is one of the main functions in a capitalistic society to make people think they need this. They make them do. And actually, every time that you buy into a piece of technology, you're making it easier for them to manipulate you. Okay, you get this phone, you get this technology. Okay, now instead of now they can lay off the demons that were working for them. You understand? And now they can apply the technology to watch you rather than having somebody physically watch you. Okay? And they cannot afford to let their guard down. Okay, but the problem is with them is they're not looking at each other, they're looking at you. They're looking at some Muslim somewhere in the mountains, something, you understand that, but they don't really know that the destruction is built in. They built it into the system and they don't even know it. That's the wormhole there, just waiting, you understand, for them to, every society collapses throughout history. And every one of those societies that was established felt that they would never collapse. Okay, so the destruction is built in. You know, so the point is, in terms of African Americans, black people, and what part we play in that system, we play a very integral part in that system. Okay? Because of the fact you are needed to maintain the status quo and to make sure that anybody coming up in your mix as a black person is told on. To your point earlier, they talk too much. Black people talk too much. You understand? They talk too much. You know, and consequently, like I mentioned before, if you had a way to change the system, who would you go to and talk to?
Because you'd probably be out of here if you did that.
Oh, no. I mean, that's what, listen, they have organizations that listen to telephone conversations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to make sure that you're not going to come up with nothing that's going to undermine the system. Period. And that's anybody who has a system that they're trying to maintain has the same basic concerns. Okay, I want to stay in power. What do I have to do to stay in power? Well, you know, God, what that got to do with it? God ain't got nothing to do with none of this. You can't afford God in a system like this unless you create one that says the system is okay. Mm. So wherever it is, your God has to be the one you created. It has to underpin that very system that you are propagating and trying to maintain.
What is the safest bet for our children that are conscious? Because, you know, they grew up in the house with us. They can't say they don't know, because I'm sure we tell our kids the same thing that we're talking about right now.
Right.
What is the best chance for them?
To become more self-disciplined, to listen less and less to the gobbledygook that comes their way. You can't do anything without discipline. You have to have discipline. When you don't have any discipline, then anything can affect you. You don't have the ability to say yes or no. And until they can develop this ability to understand that there are some things that are good for them and some things that are not good for them, and they have to make a choice between their needs and their wants. Okay? I know this kid I was talking to yesterday. He just got a job. He just walked into the job market. His interest level, he works at a store, one of these big box stores. And I'm talking to him about saving his money, putting his money aside so that at some point in time he can invest in this, that, and the other. And he showed me on his phone a motorcycle. He wants a motorcycle. And that's okay to want any of that. And he's just coming into the job markets, so he's going to be under a lot of pressure to do those kind of things that his peers are involved in. One of the things they talk about Asian children, and the reason they're so far of Western children is because they listen to their elders. They create a schism between the elders and the young people in this Western society. They, you know, so that the children can't benefit from the wisdom of the older people.
Is that strategic for us?
What happens is, to ask questions is a sign of intelligence. In other words, you're not just sitting around taking what everybody says as being gospel. Okay? So when your children, and you train your children to question even you, that sharpens them and it sharpens you. Because you can't always live in this environment where, there was an old saying that the old people used to have, don't do what I do, do what I say do. Well, that's not going to make sense, because your children are going to do what they see you do. Okay? And either they'll accept that or reject that. And their learning curve becomes shorter because they don't have to go through a lot of the rigmarole that these other children have to go through to learn what they learn at an early age. Okay? So that kind of sets them apart. So it's like anything else. If there's an old saying, if you lay down with dogs, you're going to get fleas. So if your mix is with a lot of people who are ignorant and don't want what you want, you're going to be impeded with your progress. So most of the people who have a lot of wisdom, they don't have a lot of friends. They have specific friends with specific goals. And if they're talking about doing things together to build something, you have to remember, whatever you talk about building, if it's contrary to the status quo, it's going to be undermined and destroyed by the status quo. And those are the people you went to high school with and to college with. They're on the payroll. They're there to make sure that you don't prosper as per the dictates of the society.
You mentioned that the person that's handing you the football in high school is the same person that's handing you a subpoena.
Yeah, the subpoena, the indictments, you understand? And they come to terms with that because they're being educated by their parents, but you're not being educated by your parents, mainly because you don't have a father and a mother in the same house. You're not being educated by your parents to look out for them. You're just told to go to college. You understand you'll be able to get a better job and all the rest of that kind of stuff. When I was in high school, I wasn't thinking about going to college. So that was predetermined long before. That wasn't for me. Okay. All right. And I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. I'm just saying that was the circumstances that I gravitated toward. Okay. We met halfway. All right. So, but we were told upon graduating, there was a class that was given for how you should behave when you go look for a job. Now, they would tell you, have your shoes shine. Now, maybe you didn't have no shoes, but whatever shoes you had, shine them.
Just shine them.
Make sure that you shave. If you got a beard, shave all that off. Okay. Make sure you got your hair cut nice. You got your skin clean and all the rest of that. So you can go to the job at a steel mill and say you can't get hired. Okay. I wrote a piece one time about not Ted Bundy, but Jeffrey Dahmer. That this guy went to school with Jeffrey Dahmer, and he and Jeffrey Dahmer both went and applied for this job. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't get the job. Jeffrey Dahmer was dressed in jeans and a raggedy shirt. He was dressed in a suit and a tie and everything else. And they were predetermined when the racist beast saw him coming in, he wasn't going to get the job. So Jeffrey Dahmer was in another little room separate from him. He filled out the application, couldn't spell real good. He got the job, and then Jeffrey Dahmer came out because he was a classmate of his and say, I hope everything works out okay for you. Okay? They've hired many people like that over you who have been destructive to the society that they have modeled for them.
For our children, and for our children, not only do they have to control their wants, but they also have to be able to sustain any criticism they get for not fitting in with everybody else.
They need to get a crew. They need to put a group of people of like minds together so that they can develop something. That the people who are not just trying to go to work and pay bills. I know a guy that makes about almost $30 an hour. He doesn't have $200 in the bank. Okay? I asked him one time, if your mother needed $500, could you give it to her? He told me no. I said, $250, no. Do you have good credit? No. Do you have a car? No. Well, why are you going to work?
Isn't that on him? Yes, the system created the circumstances, but isn't that, because you talk about our kids have to have a certain amount of that, right? That's on him. Yep. That part's on him, right?
That part is on him.
How do you, let's speak to those people that if you had to convince me, if that was me, what would you say to me? And why is that so important that I grab that information from you?
Number one, there's too much of a schism between us and our young people. There's too much of a barrier that's been built, through the music industry and every other industry that's out there. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to find a child, a young person the same age as these other people to talk to them because they speak the same language. So that intelligentsia has to be developed, and they're there. They are there. It's about, they may not be in the same city. They may be in Iowa. They could be in California. They could be, but it's important for those people to network. Okay. And then what'll happen, to give you an example, the Arabs were getting a lot of play through this Gaza thing. Okay. The world was in sympathy with them. Okay. So what had to happen? What had to happen is something had to happen to turn those people who were sympathizing with them against the Arabs. So they sent in somebody to cause this problem, went through the media with it, false information, and everything. Now they turned on the Arabs. So now once again, where the Muslims were getting some sympathy, now they're not getting any simply because they have created some guy to go and do something, you understand, and use the media, the same media that was supporting genocide, now are supporting the people who are going after the Muslims, saying that the Muslims now are back in the situation that they were in pre-support. Okay? So what has to happen is, with the internet has definitely opened up a lot of information. But the way that what the adjustment that the demon made was that it's like, okay, well, all of that. What you gonna do about it? Okay, we lied about the pyramids. We lied about the Catholic Church. We lied about every single thing that you know. What are you going to do about it? You can't do nothing about it because we got January 6 people ready to go in there. They had the right idea, but they didn't have no leadership. They got inside, but that was as far as they were supposed to go. They didn't have anybody to say, okay, I'm in charge. I got this now. Go do this, go do that. So they wound up going to jail and as heroes, falling on the sword as a patriot. That's what happened. That's what happened amongst that mentality. Okay. So they have all of these people in place to stop you from making any changes in the outcome of what the society presents. You can't. You can know the truth as long as you like. They said the truth will set you free. I don't think so. Okay, what kind of freedom are you talking about? That you have to qualify. What kind of freedom are you talking about? Freedom of expression? You don't have freedom of expression. The FFC is there to make sure that you don't influence with so many people. They'll fine you, cut you off the radio, say that's bad talk. You understand? So how are you supposed to communicate with these people, man? You know, and then even in a spiritual sense, they got people praying to 10 different gods instead of concentrating that prayer to the one God and asking him for some help. But here's a guy praying to a tin can, to some rocks. You understand? To some white dude on the wall. You understand? Talking about this, that, and the other. I mean, so how are you supposed to get some help? Everybody, these people have worked this thing out. They're on every single level of your existence, man. From the time that you're born to the time you die, there's somebody there to make money off of you. Okay? It used to be cremated for $500. Now it's almost as much as the funeral. Because anything that you thought that you was going to get away with cheap, they put a block to it. Okay? So that's the name of the game, man. Those kids have to talk to kids their age for them to understand what it is because they've got a block between you and them.
And to that point, so I imagine this intellectual group full of young people, right? That have knowledge and wisdom, that's been around some scholars that understand how the system works. The problem is they're going to run up against the same roadblocks that are present now. Yeah. No matter what. Even when they try to do that, they're still going to run up the same roadblocks.
But one thing about
something they can do.
But the thing about it is, if you sit still and do nothing, nothing's going to happen.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
So you have to continue to put forth the effort because you never know when you're going to have that breakthrough.
And
but at the same time, you want to maintain a certain level of expectations because that's where your sanity lies. Okay?
Yes.
Your sanity lies in what your expectations are. And if your expectations exceed your ability to achieve, you're going to go to the mental hospital or turn into something else, a substance abuser of some kind. Okay? Maintain your standards, but lower your expectations when you come in contact with these people because of the fact that they have an understanding about and they're singularly focused on maintaining what it is that they have to do. There was an interview I saw with some liberal kind of guy. I think he was liberal. I don't know what he was. But the questions he was putting to this hard right-wing guy. The guy said, listen, man, the guy was saying, well, we interfered with the election of a Democratic elected president. He said, so what? This is the guy I'm talking about. Mm. These are the people I'm talking about, the stalwarts. He told him, so what? He said, if their agenda is not there with our agenda, we did the right thing to destroy it. He said, what you complaining about? You getting the benefit of everything. That's what he told him. And that's the whole thing, like I'll tell you, in terms of how if you have a relationship with some white people, okay, who are not really committed to what you committed to, okay, and I don't see how they can be unless it's definitely something dealing with spirituality or religion, okay, where they could be committed to what you're committed to, okay, that's rare, okay, but what I'm saying is that you have to lower your expectations of what these people are going to do for you. Okay, because number one, they come to, psychologically, they come to the table with a superiority complex anyway.
And so you think that actually creates more of the limitations than anything else. There are high expectations in their ego.
Number one, everybody's affected by the exposure to the system and what the system offers you in terms of education. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing like with a police officer. When he pulls a gun on a black person versus pulling a gun on a white person, his whole educational exposure and history comes into play with that trigger. He's more apt to pull the trigger on the black person simply because he's already been told he's exempt when he kills this person. Because his grandfather and all of that comes into play when you have the reaction time between the mind and the trigger finger. When he pulls it on a white person, his thing is trying to get him just to surrender so they don't have to shoot him. Okay, but with you, he's got carte blanche. And some sick, demented, deranged individual who sits over the top of them, you understand, is giving them the green light to do whatever they want to do to you. You understand? And the main thing that they do is like, if you're there with a woman, a black female, their job is to disgrace you in front of this woman. Just like they did during slavery, disgrace you in front of your family. To rape a man in front of his wife and kids to make them feel less about him. It's the same thing that's in place today. It ain't changed none.
The last 20 minutes, every time I sit down with you, I'm just full of so much information. There's so many things I want to talk about. This is the first chapter of the 7 chapters of where we are in America, African Americans. I'm going to say a couple phrases to you and then give me a response to them. Reparations.
Not going to happen. It's not because they can't do it. There's a point that they have to do. If they give you reparations, what are they going to do for the white people who are in the same financial situation that you're in? They have to give them some too, because they're the ones who've been doing all the work in terms of oppressing you.
Police brutality.
Not nonstop. They've made some changes. True enough. I have to give them credit for that. They have made some changes because they have these microphones and these cameras on them in a lot of different places. There have been some changes made, but the resistance is coming from the January 6 people who were jumping on police officers in D.C. at the Congress. They were jumping on them, killing them, beating them up, hitting them with bear spray. In other words, you got some police is okay, some police are not okay based on what the white people think and authority over the police, what they believe in.
Building black wealth.
Okay, that's always going to be minimized. Okay, number one, you have every time that you have a black person that makes $1 billion, you have 20 white people that make $2 billion. Okay, because they know that everybody's for sale, including their people. So if you get too much money, you'll buy influence from them. But right now, you have lawyers and who are going to take most of your black wealth, accountants is going to take most of your black wealth, trying to keep you out of jail or keep you from losing that money through lawsuits.
Patriotism. What is American patriotism?
First of all, I have to ask, how much of this do I have invested in this country? Okay. I've shown through my history that I have as much invested psychologically and propaganda-wise as the white people. But when it comes to me being able to be rewarded for the patriotism that I'm supposed to have, it never comes to light. Okay? They'll give the things that I've done, they'll give a credit to somebody else who's more palatable to them. They're not going to give me the same opportunity as going to give a nice Negro guy. You understand, who is a real Uncle Remus Sambo. That's not going to happen. Okay, so when you start talking about ownership, okay, if I own this, I'm just saying from a logical standpoint, man. If I own something, why am I doing this to myself and I own it? I mean, it's just a simple question. I own something, right? Okay, but even after I pay for it, I still don't own it. I pay $1 billion or $10 million for a house, or $100,000 for a house. After the bank has been paid and all the interest, I paid $300,000 for the house. And I still don't own it, because if I don't pay the taxes to the status quo owners of America, to the people who own America, then they could come and take my $1 million house, sell it for $400,000. You understand? Charge those people enough money in interest where they pay another $10 million, which I really paid for the house. And nobody ever owns anything here. Okay? So where's the ownership? Where's my deed? Show me a deed. If you own something, you should have a deed. You think all I have is debt. All I have is people undermining me from every possible position. Above me, below me, to my right, to my left, in front of me, and back of me. I'm surrounded by people who are undermining everything that I want to do. I want to build a nation. I want to do this. I'm not talking about doing something to the American people. I'm not talking about blowing nothing up. I'm just talking about building something up. No. You can't have that. That's not what this is about. You weren't brought here to compete with me. And that's what the people in Tulsa were doing. They were going to be putting situations in place to compete. And they were getting ready to do a deal with Germany. They were getting ready to do deals with Libya, Liberia, you understand, and getting rubber. No, you can't do it. A lot of these white companies that you see, you understand, where the guy is dumb, he really can't, he's dumb, actually. He just got a job, okay? The government gives him contracts to make screws. And the contract is so long-term and so lucrative, he can hire other white people, you understand, where they can pay a house note, they can pay a car note. They could do the same thing with you. Okay, they could sign a contract for you to make rubber hoses. 25 million rubber hoses a month. You understand? Now you can hire people, black people, if they'll come to work. You understand? If they come to work, you understand? But some of these people, they don't want to go to work. Some kind of way they figure somebody owes them what they really do owe them. But the point is, they'll put you out of business by not coming to work. But the opportunity should be given to you to get government contracts where you can make 25 million rubber hoses. That's what they do with the white people. In your neighborhood, they got a small little garage, nothing but white people sneaking in and out of there every day, making $35 an hour, making screws. So where's the ownership, my friend?
Civil liberties and civil rights. Let's say civil rights. Let's just take civil rights.
I wrote a piece called Asterisks. So every single thing that relates to you has an asterisk mark by it. And that asterisk mark means that you're not the same. It needs an explanation as to why you have this. There's an explanation in doing that asterisk, at that asterisk mark. And the thing about it is I'm trying to remember the name of that thing I made, because it had civil rights in there, equal rights, civil rights. And it was like, I have to paraphrase it because I can't remember it now, but it says, illusion. There was a lot of different things that talked about illusion, civil rights, an illusion, human rights, an illusion, because none of it actually, in reality, you can't really point to anything that has been significant enough to make a change in your position here, even economically. You understand? When you start looking at the growth of the black economy versus now and 100 years ago, it's maybe 1 or 2 percentage points higher. You look at the white families and what they have coming in terms of income versus what you have. Go to traffic court. This is a good one. Go to traffic court. You were talking about police brutality. The police hunt in the black neighborhoods. You're going to tell me white people don't run stop signs, that they don't speed, that they don't have car accidents, they don't have no, but they hunt in your neighborhood. So this guy who's making $700 a week, now he's got to go and his whole thing is getting thrown off because he got to pay a $300 fine. The entire courtroom from wall to wall are black people in every city. Every major metropolitan city, the courtroom, the traffic court is filled with black people. Everything to marginalize you and undercut you to make sure that you can't even survive off of the petty money that you're making now.
The last one, which I know you enjoy, hope. What does hope look like?
Well, you have to define that. Like some people hope they can get some dope. Some people hope they can get a job and they don't care. I was when Jane Campbell was running for office, they had these ministers that had gathered together. And this one guy, he was so scandalous that even the other ministers said, man, what are you talking about, man? He was telling her that all he wanted to do is, he was trying to speak for everybody. He said all he wanted to do is just to be able to get a few crumbs off the table. Even the other ministers like, man, what are you talking about, man? You don't say that publicly, man. You understand that that's what you're getting, but you don't say that publicly. And then he was like, hee. So the thing about hope is, what are you hoping for? It depends because, like I said before, in unity, there's treason. Okay. So if you want to unify and your hope is to unify, you understand who are you going to unify for and for what purpose? Okay. So hope is an abstract term. What are you hoping for? Some people hope to move in Pepper Pike. I wouldn't want to live there. You understand? Really, I'm okay right here on 116 because I know how to survive there. Mm-hmm. But you got neighbors all around you who don't feel you should be there, but that was your hope. Mm-hmm. Okay? That was your hope. No, so hope has to be defined. What is it that's a general term and it has a lot of different meanings. You have to ask, what is your definition of hope and why are you after that particular thing that you have defined?
This is E.B. Smith with the first chapter, The State of Black America. And this show is The Facts Matter. And I spent this time with Mutawaf Shaheed, who definitely knows what he's talking about. I'm going to leave some links to his books and everything else on our website. You're going to reach me at ebsmithproject@live.com. Just don't use any foul language, but feel free to comment on our show today. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for the next chapter.